Today I'll show you how to build an auto-populating invoice template in Excel that pulls in your client and item data instantly. Once you set this up, creating invoices takes just seconds. No more manually typing them, and you'll save so much time. If you like the template that we use today, you can grab it in my shop, you can customize it, or take the formulas and copy them into your own invoice template. I'll include the link below. Let's get started. So just a quick overview of what we're going to build today. We've got this invoice template here in Excel, and when I select my client name, all of the client data is going to automatically populate into the invoice. And then down here in this section, I can select a description of one of my products or services, put the units or hours, and then have the invoice will automatically calculate based on what I put in here. So that's what we're going to build out today. And what this is going to do is we're going to look at, in our workbook, we'll have a sheet called Clients, where we'll have client data set up as a table. And this is where all of the client data is going to pull into the invoice for their contact information and payment terms. And then we also have a products and services tab with a table of data, and that's going to pull in the item number and the unit number so that we can fill in and create an invoice for any given client. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with a fresh workbook over here. And in this workbook, so far, I haven't converted this into a table. So that's the first thing that we want to do is take our client database sheet, and this has our client name that we're going to look up on, and then it has all of the contact, email, phone number, address, and we even have a column here that's concatenating the city, state, and zip so that I can pull that into one of the cells on the invoice, as well as the payment terms. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click Control-T on my client database sheet, and I'm going to make sure that this table has headers is checked and just click OK. Now this turns my data set into a table automatically. I can come up to the Table Design tab, drop down here for the style, and select light if I don't want to have it formatted in a certain color. So I like to do that. And then you can even name your table if you want to. I can call this TBL Clients, and that's my client database table. The reason we want to set our data up as a table is so that we can add new rows down here, and they will automatically pull into our lookup formulas on the invoice template. The next tab is going to be our products or service list, and this is also, we need to turn this into a table, so I can click anywhere inside the data, hit Control-T, click OK, and then I can come up and change the formatting of that table, and I can name that table. And now I have a sheet where I'm going to create my invoice template. Now I went ahead and copied an invoice template out there. There's free invoice templates available from Microsoft online. I'll include a link in the description below so you can search for any design that you like, copy and paste it into a sheet here in Excel where you have your client and your item data. And so I just pasted this in and formatted it a little bit. I updated some of the columns here so that I could include all of the data that I wanted to have customized on my invoice template. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to create a drop-down list selection where I can select the company name. And I want to select the company name from this column here on my client's table list. And so what I'm going to do is select the cell where I want that drop-down list, and then I'm going to come up to the Data tab. Under the Data Tools area, drop down and select Data Validation. Under the Settings tab, Allow, drop down and select List. Put your cursor in the source area, navigate over to the clients sheet, and select column B. And then we're going to click OK. So now this automatically creates a drop-down list selection that will contain all of the clients and customer names that are currently on that list, as well as any new ones that you add to your table. So they'll pop up here and you'll be able to select them. And now what we want to do is we want to enter lookup formulas in these other areas so that based on the client that we select up here in cell C13, we want to be able to look up that particular company's client ID name, their contact name, phone number, email address, and so forth. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use XLOOKUP formulas to pull that data in from the client sheet over here. So I'm going to select the first cell where I want to pull in the client ID. I'm going to type equals, and I'll start typing XLOOKUP. I can hit tab. Once XLOOKUP pops up, it'll open up the formula for me. And the first thing I need to do is enter the lookup value. And the lookup value is going to be cell C13. It's going to look up whatever we select in cell C13 as the company name. But we want to anchor that, so we don't want that to move or change that cell reference. So to anchor that, I'm going to hit function F4 on my keyboard, and that adds $ around that cell row and column, and that anchors that for us. And then what I'm going to do is hit comma, and now I need to enter the lookup array. And to do that, I'm going to navigate to the clients tab, and what I'm doing is I want to look up that client company name here in column B on this sheet tab. And so I select that, and it enters in the correct cell for the lookup array. And then I'm going to hit comma, and the next thing is the return array. So I want to return client ID number. So I'm going to select that column, and then I'm going to close my parentheses and hit enter. Now, when I drop down and select a company name, the client ID will automatically populate. But if I delete or clear out the company name, notice that how I have a 0 that shows up here. If I want this to be blank, what I can do is I can wrap this formula in an if statement. And so I come up to the formula bar next to equals. I'm going to type if, open parentheses, and the logical test is going to be if C13 is blank. So if C13 equals, and we're going to just do quote with leaving blank, so a double quote, comma, then we want this cell to be blank. So we do double quote and then comma. If false, then we want it to populate the XLOOKUP formula value. So then all we have to do is come here to the end, close the parentheses, and hit enter. And now this will display blank and not have a 0 or a hashtag or error in it if there's nothing here in the client name. So that's something optional that you can do on your own invoice if you like that to look a little cleaner. All right, let's go ahead and add the rest of the XLOOKUP formulas for all of the other client information. So for contact name, I'm going to type equals. We're going to do XLOOKUP. And we're going to look up based off of C13, hit function F4 or F4 on your keyboard, depending on your keyboard that you're using. And then the lookup array, hit comma, go back to your client database. We're going to look up the client name in column B, comma, and then we're going to return the contact name. So we're going to select column C, close parentheses, and hit enter. Now we're going to do phone number, just hit equals, XLOOKUP. We're going to look up value company name in C13, hit F4 or function F4 to anchor it, comma, we're going to look that up over in the client name column B, comma, and then we're going to add the phone number, close parentheses, and hit enter. And then we're going to look up the email address, equals XLOOKUP, look up value, anchor it, F4 or function F4, comma, look up array, looking that up in the client name column B, comma, then we want to return the email address, so we'll select column D, close parentheses, and hit enter. And now we want the address. I'm going to do that in these two cells. So the first cell, I'm going to do the street address. So I'm going to say equals XLOOKUP, looking up C13, function F4, comma, navigate to the Clients tab, select column B to look up the client name, comma, and then I want the street address to pop in, close parentheses, and hit enter. And on the next line, I'm going to pull in the city, state, and zip. So that's equals XLOOKUP, hit tab. My lookup value is C13, hit F4 or function F4, comma, look up that client name, column B, comma, and this time we're going to pull in the concatenated column J for city, state, and zip, close parentheses, and hit enter. So now I can come back up to the client name, select it, and all of that information will pop in automatically. And if you notice any formatting issues that pop up while you're creating your template, you can always come back, select your cells, come back to your Home tab, and then just make sure you can select the font that you want to use and the font size, and it should update everything for you automatically. All right, I'm going to clear this out, and then the next thing we want to pull in are the terms. So we're going to do an XLOOKUP for that, equals XLOOKUP. And we're going to still look up off of the client name, and then we're going to hit function F4 and comma, and then we're going to look up the client name, and then we're going to hit comma, and then we're going to select the column K for payment terms to return that value, and we're going to close parentheses and hit enter. Now the next thing we want to work on is the invoice numbering. So I want a unique invoice number for each invoice that I create for a client on any given day. So what I can do is, the first thing I'm going to do is in the date formula, we're just going to type equals and use the today function with open and close parentheses. You just simply type equals today, open and close parentheses, and hit enter. And that enters in the today formula, and it will automatically put today's date or the current date. Every time you open the spreadsheet will be the current date in that field. Then if we want to create an invoice number that's going to be based off of the client ID and the date, we can create a concatenated field, and we can simply type equals. If we want to have quotes, INV for invoice, space, dash, space, and then close quotes. Then we're going to add an ampersand to connect. The next thing we want to include is cell C14, which is going to be the client ID. And then we are going to type ampersand to connect our next section. We're going to type a quotes. We're going to do space, hyphen, space, and then quotes. We're going to do another ampersand to connect, and this time we're going to do a formula for text, and then open parentheses, today, open and close parentheses, comma, quote, MMDDYY for month, day, year, close quotes, and close parentheses, and hit enter. So now when we select a company name, the client ID populates, and this invoice will populate automatically with the client ID and today's date. Next thing we want to do is automatically calculate the due date on the invoice, and it's going to look at what pops up here in the payment terms for whatever client. So notice on our client database, some clients have a net 15, some have net 30, some are due on receipt. So depending on what pulls in to our invoice, we want that due date on the invoice to automatically calculate. So to do that, we're going to use an if statement. So we're going to type equals if, open parentheses, and we're going to say if this cell, which is C36, equals, and then I'm going to type open quotes, and I'll type net 15, which is one of the options, close quotes, comma, then I want that to return the date that's here in E13 plus 15 days, close parentheses, comma, but if, open parentheses, the logical test of C36 equals, open quotes, net 30, close quotes, comma, then we want to take today's date plus 30, close parentheses, comma, if, open parentheses, C36 equals, quotes, due on receipt, close quotes, comma, then we just want to return due on receipt. We want the text to pop up there. Close quotes, and then we're going to close parentheses 3 times to close everything out and hit enter. So now if the client is a net 15, then it will add 15 days automatically to today's date. But if we select a client that is net 30, it'll add 30 days. And if we select a client that is due on receipt, it will say due on receipt. Now, the next part of our invoice that we want to set up to auto-populate is going to be the description down here. We want that to pull from the different products and services that might be listed over here on this sheet. So to do that, we are going to select our first cell under description. We're going to come up to the data tab, go to the data tools area, drop down for a data validation. We're going to select on the settings tab, go to list, put your cursor in source, and then we're going to navigate to the product and service items sheet. And then we are going to select column B. This is going to be so that we can drop down and select whatever item from that list and click OK. And so now we can hit Control C to copy, and we're going to paste that and hit enter. So now that drop down list lives on all of the rows here. Now the next thing we want to do is automatically pull in the price based off of that item that we select over in the description. So to do that, we're going to use the XLOOKUP formula to link those. So we're going to type equals XLOOKUP, and we're going to look up value. We're going to pick this cell, and then we are going to hit comma. Our lookup array is going to be on the product and service items list. We're going to look up from column B to match that, and then what we're going to hit comma, and then what we want to return is that unit price, and close your parentheses and hit enter. And so now we can copy down this formula as well. But before we do that, if we want to use the if statement so that it will show up blank without a zero there, we can do that. That's a cleaner look for your invoice. So I would recommend that. So just select your cell, go back up to the formula bar where it says equals, place your cursor, type if, open parentheses, and your logical test is if this description field, so I'm going to select cell B22, is blank, so equals, and then 2 quotes for blank, then comma, the value you want to return will be, just put 2 quotes for a blank value, and then hit comma. Otherwise, you want to return the XLOOKUP formula. We'll come to the end, close that out, and hit enter. So now we can drag and copy this formula down, and anytime we select a description and type in our units or hours, then the price will automatically populate. So I have mine set up for a services type of business, but you may have product lists, so you can do hours or units, whatever you want to do for your invoice, whatever makes the most sense, feel free to do that. So now if we select one of our services, we've got the price here. Now what we want to have happen is have the amount automatically populate based on the number of hours or units that we input. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste a special formula over here in the amount cell. I'm going to paste this formula. You're more than welcome to copy the same formula. The reason I'm using this formula, it's not just a straight hours times price, because I want it to show up blank if there's no value in there. And so this formula will help achieve that. So feel free to do that and enter that in, and you hit enter. And then once you have that in that cell, you can drag that down to copy it all the way down. Now we can enter in units, and our amount will automatically calculate. Now we want our subtotals and our tax rate and our total amounts down here. So those are going to be our straightforward formulas. We're going to type equals, sum, open parentheses, and we want to sum all of the values in our amounts, close parentheses, and hit enter. Then you can type in whatever tax rate that you need to for your area, and then calculate the total tax by saying equals the subtotal times the tax rate and hit enter. That will give you a total tax rate. And then down here, our formula is simply adding the total tax plus the subtotal, and that will give you the total amount for the invoice. All right, let's scroll back up to the top. Now, the last thing that you want to make sure you do is we want to make sure that we have this formatted so that if we print to PDF, that it will be on one page. So we're going to come up to the page layout tab, go to your margins, click on custom margins, select the page tab, and click the button that says fit to 1 page wide by 1 page tall, and then click OK. Now when you come up to print preview, you'll see that if you print this as a PDF, it will automatically show up on one page. Now that you know how to create the invoice template that automatically pulls the data from your client database, the next step is to scale this process and automate it so that we can create invoice and billing statements in bulk. Be sure and check out my next video where I'll show you how to do this. If you found this video helpful, be sure and give it a thumbs up to like it, and you can subscribe to my channel for more videos and tutorials. Visit my website, SharonSmithHR.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.